There we go. Hello everyone, Miss Art Garden here, and today I'm going to go through how I use the pen tool to make my lines on illustrations look very clean and smooth. So this will be a very specific tutorial for Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CC, and also I'm using it on a Mac, so I will often say Command something. And so if you are using a Windows, I think typically instead of Command it's Control. Hopefully it won't be too confusing. If you have any problems, I will be doing a live stream and you can join me Saturday, and I will put the UTC time up there and you can come watch me do it live and ask me questions there. But for now, we're going to go through how this tutorial is done. So the first thing, you're going to need to know what the pen tool is. And you have your toolbar here, and I'm zoomed in here so you'll be able to see it a little better. And this one right here that looks like an old ink pen, those fountain pen kinds, if you hover over it, you see it says pen tool. And then parentheses it says P, and that's just the hotkey that you hit to get that tool. So if I hit B, it goes to brush, and if I hit P, it goes back to pen tool again. And you want to make sure you are on the top option for your pen tool, which just says pen tool. You have some other options here like freeform and stuff. Don't worry about these. We will be using keys on the keyboard to kind of mimic these, but for now, you want this set at the pen tool only. And also up here, where you have some more settings, you have your pen tool icon here, and you have to make sure that this drop down menu says path instead of shape. So if you've opened this for the first time and it's set differently, you want to make sure it's like that. And then other than that, I think most of these are pretty common. I have mine on combined shapes, that's important. Align to selection, I'm not sure if I even use that, but that's how my setting is. These are all grayed out. That rubber band is not clicked, and auto add delete is clicked. So those are my settings for how I do this. Okay, so what is the pen tool? It makes these vector paths, which I can then stroke with a brush or a pencil tool, and it makes these lines very clean. It follows them, and you can manipulate them on a very easy level. You can resize your paths all you want, and then you can stroke them at the thickness of brush stroke that you want. I'll show you how to do a way to taper the edges a little bit and change the thickness of them. So that's just one benefit. I'll have a video later on showing how you can use these paths to manipulate for just very easy animations. It's non-destructive editing essentially for your lines. You don't have to lay out all your paths like I do. What you can do is use them like for extremely big lines. It is very hard on a computer to draw a curved line without it looking, you know, a little bit jaggedy. So we'll blow this up here. You see it always looks a little bit jaggedy when I do that. Instead, you can take the pen tool and you can curve it out however you want, and then when you stroke it, it'll be nice and clean and perfect. One more thing, since we already went through how the pen tool needs to be set up, you also want your paths open, and if they are not open, at the drop down menu you want to select window, and I know mine is cut out a little bit from the crop of my screen capture, but right here it says view, window, and help. So window is almost over to the very edge next to help, and then you want to make sure that this paths is checked right here. And that's what you want. So if I have this unchecked, it'll delete that. It's gone. And I no longer have the paths. And then I just go back and I reselect it and it will show up again, and there are my paths. And I have them actually hidden behind channels and layers. But since this is kind of like a accordion file thing, it's not a big deal. So mine won't be showing all the time, but I'll be going back and forth. You can have your show, you can set up however you want. Now what you want to do is you typically have a drawing already done. So here's one I just sketched up, and we're going to go through how to ink this essentially with the pen tool. So if you've sketched something in with your tablet and you want it to look really nice and clean and crisp, or if you've scanned something in to the computer, a sketch that you now want to make completely digital, this is the perfect tool for you. I'm going to start out by hitting P, and that's going to select my pen tool. And the very first thing you want to do is with the normal click of a mouse, I guess that's called the left click, you just want to put what is known as I think anchor point, although you're in your history, it'll say new work path. And you'll see in your paths, it'll say work path. And now this is unsave. Say you've clicked off of this and hit enter so that it goes into like the neutral zone. If you click and make another one, that original one is gone. So before you do anything more, when you lay your first anchor path or first few anchor paths, you want to double click this, save the path. I guess I'll just call this tutorial path. One other thing, if you are going over a sketch, sometimes it's very hard to see these paths. If your lines are very dark, you get confused and you're like, well, where did my path go? So a good idea to do is take your sketch layer opacity and turn it way down. So I have white as my background layer. It does not matter which layer you're on when you lay these paths. They're independent from any layer at the moment until you stroke them, and then that stroked pixel data becomes bound to that. Now we're on the tutorial path. I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to delete everything but that first anchor path, so just that one. And it said pick up path there because I clicked off of it. But if you had just clicked on that first, now no matter where else you click, you'll be laying down these paths. So what you want to do, I'm going to go back to my history where I said pick up path. You want to think about, so here is where I want my path to start because this is the first line that I want. And I just said pick up path again because I accidentally clicked that. And then down here is where I want this first path to end. So I'm just going to click there. And now I want to be done. I don't want to click any more paths like that. So what I do is I hold down the command key and you'll get this little arrow. So if you're using another program, you just have to play around until you get this little white hollowed out arrow. And then when you click off of it, you will now be disconnected from those anchor points on the path. If you want to continue, see that little chain? You click that. And it says pick up path, and now you're back on the path. Or if you wanted to pick up this one there, you're back on this path up here. But if you want to click off of it, hold down the command key, click, normal left click mouse click, and then you can let go of the command key and you can make another path over here or whatever you want to do. But what I actually want to do is I want to take this line now and move it out so it fits the curve of this sketch line. So to do that, I'm going to add an anchor point in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the command. I'm going to get this white cursor, hollowed out cursor thing, and click on the path. And now I've picked up the path, but I'm not bound to either of these anchor points. I just have this path selected. And if you hold down the command key while you click on this path, you can actually move it around. But what we want to do is we just want to be clicked on it, and then when you hover over it now, you will see there's a little plus next to that pen icon, and that's what I want. What it does is it adds these little, I call them stabilizers, I don't know the actual technical term, but what they do is when you move the path out now, it doesn't create like a jagged line. Like if I hadn't had those, it would look more like that. If you mess up, you see that little minus, you can click off of it, or you can add it. You can add as many as you want and delete as many as you want just by clicking without holding any keys down. But right now we want that anchor point, so I'm going to click it. And then I'm going to hold that command key again, and I'm going to get that hollowed out white arrow. And I'm going to move it out so it's closer to this line. So now we have a little bit better, but it's not quite matching up here, and it's not quite matching down here. And I would suggest for down at this section, we add another anchor point there. And you can see now it's cut this stabilizer short so it can fit this one into the middle. And that's just what it does. And be careful, because if you mess up here and you delete it, it's still cut that short. It's not going to bring it back out, so you'd have to readjust it yourself. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to where I had added that, and I'm going to hold down the command key again, and with this box where this anchor point is, I'm going to drag it out again. And that just matches it up perfectly. And you can double check your work by clicking off of it, and at any point if you want to see your lines without your sketch there, you can also delete them. Just thought I would cover that too. So up here, let's think about where we want. So I want this to go up a little bit here. So I don't want to move this, I don't want to add this here to the middle and then move it up. I mean, you can do that, but what I think for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the anchor point right up here. I'm going to click here, and you can see this one's shorter because there's not much space here to add one, and then it's made a little bit longer one. I'm going to hold down that command key and move it up so it matches this a little bit. And then now I'm going to take this, I'm going to grab this end of this stabilizer. You've already seen me move these. You can move these and manipulate them. So I'm going to move that one out, and now it fits a little bit cleaner. And now we have a pretty good matching line. So now what happens when I want to add this little peak here? Do you remember when you hovered over this and you get the little chain thing? Let's go ahead and connect to that end of that anchor point here by just clicking on it, normal left mouse click. And now we are reattached. It said pick up path in the history. So we're reattached to it. We're going to move up to that point. I'm going to move down to this point, and that's where I want to end it again. So I'm going to hold down that command, and I can click off of it, and now I'm separated from that path tool. I'm no longer connected to it. Okay, so since I've clicked off of this, it's important to note that you cannot get the add an anchor point button. What you're actually going to do is create a whole other vector path line. So to get the part where you can add it, you always have to hold down the command and select the vector path that you want to edit or manipulate, and then you'll get that little plus symbol. You can click on that. I'm going to click a plus. I'm going to hold down the command and just move this up a little bit, and then do the same over here. Click a plus here. Move this over a little bit while holding the command key, and then there we go. We have that extra little part added. Say I want this line actually not to come out from the corner here, but to go over a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is with that little starburst symbol, I am going to click and create another little path. It's all on the same path. You can see tutorial path is still here, but this is now separated from this other path. It's just a new path, but they're all the same. Hard to understand, but essentially what you're doing is just making another line that's separate from that one. So if you want to manipulate them later, you'll have to click on the very specific ones you'll want to do. I'll go through that. So I want this to start here. I want it to end here where it's coming in here at the hairline. So I'm just going to click about there. And then while I'm still connected to this path, you don't have to click every time. See where this is black and this is white? That means this is the one you're connected to. But if you want to also just change it so it's at the middle, you can do that there. And then you don't have to do that step where you click off of it and then click back on it. All these little things are hard to remember, but you'll pick them up eventually. Now I'm going to hold down the command. So it'll go from showing me that minus to the white hollow arrow look. And I'll move that up here. And then up here, I want to move this up here, so I'm going to add an anchor point here. Hold down to my command key and move it up. And I'm going to do one over here. Add an anchor point and move it up and over. And then I actually want this line to go in a little bit, just for an artistic reason. So I'm going to add one more here and move it in. And that'll just give the line a slight curve. You can click down here if you want to manipulate this. Click and drag this very end, or you can, manipulate your anchor points by clicking on one and twisting. These things act like a straight line, and you can manipulate them that way. So either way, you get that little curve that you want. So let's do this last hairline, and then we'll go on to the more complex shapes. So we'll add an anchor point here, a new line, and we'll add one down here. I'm going to go outside the box a little bit. I'm going to click here, hold down the command key and move it out. Click here, hold down the command key and move it in, and there we go. We can have that line. We can double check without our sketch layer. We can see these lines are starting to take shape. So now let's do the little bit more complex tracing of this outer face line here. And I'm going to zoom this in so we can see nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line, a path line back here, and then over it I will put the eye line. And you can also just choose to trace over these later with your brush tool, or you can do them before you lay the paths, however you prefer. But I'm going to put, I'm just going to do it so there's a line under, and then the eye line shape is above it. I mean, there's no really above under with these. They're kind of exist in the same parallel world. Here, we'll add this line to help first. So I'm going to add this here, add an anchor point to it, and then move it over. And then where this face line hits this hairline, I'm going to add an anchor point there, and I'm going to end it here. And I have a break in my face. That's just a artistic preference. You can go all the way up to the ear or whatever. So now what I want to do is the same as we've been doing. I'm going to click, and maybe up here, because I'm thinking about when I drag it out kind of in this circular shape, how it's going to look. So we'll add my first one for the cheek. I'll add it right about here, and then I'll hold down that command key and I'll move it down. And you can see it's gone way over, but that's okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one here, click on it, hold down the command key, and drag it over. Okay, so it's not quite the right shape. I'm going to move that down a little bit here. It's not quite the shape I want. The first thing I want to do is see where these, I'm going to click back on this one so you see them both. You can always see if some of the things for some reason only shows one of them most of the time. But we want to click on this one, so I'm holding down the command key so I can click and select this one. And I want to manipulate these little stabilizer things so that they're not at that line angle. So I'm going to move it out like this and then move this out a little bit. So we'll get this rounded look. And now I can move this in. I'm going to add an anchor point there, hold down the command key and move it in. And I'm going to do the same down here. I'm going to click on it, add an anchor point, move it in. Now here comes the fine touches, and you can click off it. It looks pretty good. You can hide that sketch layer and see it's a pretty good shape. I'm almost happy with it. I want this cheek actually to go out a little bit, and this does follow the sketch line, so this is just like an edit after the fact. So let's click on this line, and we've actually happened to just click on this anchor point, but if I hadn't clicked on it I would select this, and I'm going to now hold down the command key, select this stabilizer, and I'm going to move it down. And you can see it doesn't change the shape of this one, just this bottom one. Move it down just a little bit, and then move this whole thing up a bit. And what that does is give her cheek just a little bit more of a rounded look that I prefer. And I actually want this to, right up here, I'm going to click on it again, select this one, and I want to move this out a little bit to give just this look of having it go in and then out and then in. And then up here, I actually want a little bit of a space. So I've clicked off of it. I'm gonna hold down the command key, click on it, add an anchor point, and move that out a little bit. These are just the fine little details to make this line exactly how you want it to be. So I'm actually gonna select this and move it up a little bit. And that's just a little bit of a line difference. So we're doing pretty good. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more comfortable. Now I want to show you what you can do where you have your path, you have this, and now you want this to be a very sharp angle, and what you can do. When it's at the starburst, we've clicked off of everything while holding command. We're going to add an anchor point here. We're going to add an anchor point at the back there, and then we're going to do our usual plus. And now you can either move this up and adjust it after the fact, or you can hit the Option key, which might be Alt in Windows. You'll have to play around. If you hold it down, you'll get this little symbol that looks kind of like a caret or a greater than sign turned at side, or whatever the symbol is called. And if you click on it while holding down that key, you'll lose those little stabilizers. And now you have a point that's independent of those stabilizers. And when you move it, you'll have a very sharp angle. And that's how you do very sharp shapes. So we'll have it and go here. And now we have a little bit more of a sharp shape, but we want it to be a little bit smooth. So as counterproductive as this is, I actually want to add those stabilizers back on. So how do you do that? You hold down the command key, you select that path, and now when you hover over it, you hold down the Option key again. You'll get the same symbol, and if you hold it and click and drag, now see this is going, I'll show you, it's going like the reverse way you want it, so it's looping. But when you click and drag, you get these stabilizers back. You get your old friends back, as weird as it is. So we have these little stabilizers. I want just this one to go in. So I'm going to hold down that Option key again and just drag that one in so it's nice and sharp. And then I can move this point down, and I'm going to hold down the Option key again so I can manipulate this one, bring it up a little bit, and then I'm going to click off of it. And there we go. We have that shape more towards my liking. Okay, so let's do that again with this one over here. We're going to do the same thing where we add our 2 anchor points, add one in the middle, and then I'm going to get rid of the stabilizers, hold down that command key and move it, and then bring the stabilizers back. And then for this one, sometimes they go backwards. You'll just have to figure this out. So instead of going this way, we'll have to go this way to get them. It's a little bit trial and error. I'm not exactly sure the logic behind it. And then you can move that down like that. And then let's go and do some of these harder facial features. So for instance, her nose, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here. And then I just want a rounded part for her nostrils. So I click up here, but oh no, I think that's a little bit weird. It's too long. I want this line to come in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the command key and click on the end of this so that I select this anchor point. And then I'm going to, while holding down the command key, drag it in a little bit. And this is different than the sketch. I didn't like the nostril in the sketch, so I'm adding a little bit more of a flared nostril look there. And then now I want this actually to go down a little bit. So how do you move a line that you've placed and it's too high? You hold command, you hold Option, and when you click over it, this is essentially to duplicate it. So if you actually clicked and dragged, you would be duplicating that line path, but we don't actually want to do that. So we're going to hold down that and just click on it real quick and make sure you haven't duplicated. If you have duplicated it, you could see in your history. This used to be a little bit easier to do. They've changed this for some reason. So now the entire line is highlighted, and you hold down that command key, just the command key, and you can move it around now with that arrow, the white arrow that turns into this black arrow sign. And you can move it exactly where you want, and then you can click off of it, and it's just the same as it always has been. Except I realize now that I've put the nostril over here, but I actually want the nostril here. So what can you do? You can select it, click that anchor point, and move it the opposite way, and then move this up like this. All these little things are things that'll become second nature eventually, but for now they might be a little bit harder. So we've clicked off, we're going to click here, we're going to go a little bit faster. So we make these anchor points, add one, hold down the command, and move it over. I'm going to click over here, add one, move it over, and I'm going to do the same up here, add this, move it over. So we've done her nose much faster now. You can see the rate at which we do this. We can check this. Oh no, I don't actually like this. So now we can edit this again if we want and move this a little further out. Maybe you've moved it in too far the first time. Okay, so let's finish off the hair and some of these details at a little bit faster of a rate. So I'm going to click, 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 click and lay that all out like I want. Click off of it, click onto it, make an anchor point, and then drag it. Click off, click on, make an anchor point, drag it. You actually didn't need to click off there. You can actually just drag these. A little bit weird talking and doing this to show you. Well, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. So now I'm clicking off of it. I want to go over here, make another one, click down, up, and then I've clicked off, but I didn't actually have to. Click on, add an anchor point, drag, add an anchor point, drag, add an anchor point, drag, add an anchor point, drag. There we go. Click off. That is the shape that I wanted. Let's go over here to where the ear is. Let's click here, add an anchor point, drag it, and then I'm going to move this. I'm going to hold down the thing and drag it down here too. Let's have this little section of like where the hair is being broken here and here. I'm going to move this down. And then I actually want to create a closed space here. Okay, this isn't the right one. You see that little symbol? I don't know, that'll select that anchor point. What we want to do is close it. So now you see the circle symbol for like closing it. I'm going to close it, and you can see closed path up here. So if you wanted to do shapes, this is how you would do the closed path. But we're going to add another anchor point and drag it down for now. And this will just be a line and not a shape. I mean, it's a shape, but we will be stroking the path later and making it a line. Okay, so now I want to add a line here, but if I get too close, it's going to try to add it to this anchor point. I want this separate and independent. So let's add it over here and then hold down the command and just drag that where we want it to be. And this way it can be right over here without the thing trying to close it on us. And when we drag it down here and then move it down, it will still actually be independent from this one. As you can see, when I'm clicking on these, they select the different ones. Okay, and then we will add the ear detail. I'm going to add one here, one down here, add one anchor point, drag it all the way up here, and then I'm going to take this and move it until it reshapes more like I want it. And I'll move this in a little bit here. I'm going to drag this down here, and this is going over too far, so I'm going to shrink up this side, and I'm actually going to move this out a little bit while we're at it. And click in here, add a few little details, things. I'm just clicking and dragging things around until they take the shape of my sketch. And let's do just an easy thing here where we bring it in like that, and that looks like an ear, I guess. So we're pretty much at this stage here. I'm going to pick up this path, click it up here, make a separate one down here, and I'll scroll down so that I can get this shape here. And these are all kind of like, once you get to this level, it goes much faster. I can do it even faster than this, but I don't want to be too confusing. So hopefully you are following along. And like I said, if you have any questions, I'll be doing a live stream of this later in the week. You can come and ask me them then. So I've decided I want to do that thing here where I want it just totally pointed. I'm not even going to add the stabilizers back. So I'm going to hold down Option, get rid of that, hold down the command, move that over, and then I'm going to add some anchor points and kind of manipulate the line so it's a little curved up here, and then it's convex down here, or just curved the other way down there. And then I'll add another line there, and that's just kind of a collar thing. We'll add over here, we'll add a little V shape. So let's click up here, and let's click here and drag it down and then up, and that's just a very smooth V shape. And obviously if you wanted it to be a little rougher, you could take the stabilizers away and it would be a rougher V shape. It doesn't really matter which way. And then I'm going to move this in a little bit here like that. Now I'm going to click over here and move this up, giant shoulder area. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to basically take this anchor point and match it up where this line ends, and then I'm going to take one, move it in here, and if this one, say that one was over like that, you would just click on the very end there until you have the black anchor point, and then you can move them when they're black, move them in like that, and then we'll move this up over here to finish it off. And one little last line for her neck, I suppose, just like that. So now we have everything but her minute facial details. So let's add those in here. I'll start with the mouth. I'm going to put them at the corners here of her mouth, and then I will drag this down where there's the dip of the Cupid's bow or whatever it's called on lips. Make one that goes up, make another one that goes up, and then finish off by selecting these and moving them down. And then this one, there's not enough room to do that, so I'm just going to take this anchor point stabilizer and move it down a little bit. And then we will have just this curved line down here. Move it down, little lip line up here, upper, I guess that's actually the Cupid's bow, and this is the seam of the mouth. So you can look on the sketch and you can see it like that. Okay. So now that we're going to do the eyebrows, and just like over here, we'll have a closed shape for them. So I'm going to start here, go over here, and then I'm just actually going to close it off there. And it looks like one line, but now if you add an anchor point and then click and drag it up with the Command key, you can see it actually had two, one on top of the other. And you can move this over here and move this up here so it's more of the shape you want. If you don't want this to be pointed so bad, you can take a stabilizer and create one there. And then you can do the same over here. I'm going to go here, here, and then I'm going to go back here. I don't want it to actually connect with this though, so I'm going to lay it and then move it. Instead of adding a point and dragging it down, what you can do is take the Option key, add a stabilizer, move it out like that, rather than having to do that. Just however you prefer to do it. There's no right or wrong way. Okay, so now let's do the eyes, which are a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click up here. I'm going to click in here. I'm going to click here, down here, up here, and then I'm going to go back to the original thing. So this is a little bit off from the shape, so there'll be a little bit more manipulating. And we have this closed in shape too, so it shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to add an anchor point here. I'm going to take away the stabilizers by holding that Option key, and then I'm going to hold down the Command key and move it up here. I'm going to add one here, take away the stabilizers, move it up, and then have it like that. And already this is a little bit more like the shape of the eye. So I'm going to add one here, move it up. I'm going to add one here, move it down, and I'm actually going to take this up here and have this go in, and that's okay that this will go at a little bit of an angle here. I'll take this, move it out. These are very small little adjustments, and this is why some people might prefer, I'm going to move this out like this, doing this with their tablet rather than the pen tool. But I've already said my piece about why I do this kind of stuff. So then finally we'll just kind of manipulate that into that shape, and we'll just click here, here, and here. So now we have that eye shape, and you can see it without that. I'm actually going to curve this up a little bit. Now, one little trick I'm going to show you, it's kind of a neat trick I do with my eyes, and you can't always do it for all face angles, but this angle is almost face forward, so you can kind of get by with it like this. I'm going to hold down the Command and the Option key, and I'm going to select that. And now I want this one as well, so I'm going to hold down the Command, Option, and Shift, and then I can select both of these. So now that I have both of these selected, I'm going to copy them, which is just Command C, and then I'm going to paste them, Command V, and you can't see it because it's pasted it right over the other one. So now I'm going to hit Command T, as in command tennis. I don't know the NATO alphabet for the letter T, but Command T, and you'll get this little box here around your paths, and you can manipulate them just like lines. I guess I showed you that a little bit earlier. But right now what I want to do is right click and then hit flip horizontal, and you will get this, and this looks a little bit weird, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, outside this box, I'm going to pivot it, and then I'm going to move the box in, and then I'm going to hold down the Command key and move this in like that. Okay, so now we've just duplicated the eye. I do this quite frequently. I've probably been seeing, it's a little bit of a cheat doing this in my speed paintings, speed drawings, or whatever. So that's a little bit of a faster way so you don't have to do that again. Now the last thing to do is the eyes. And I would actually suggest not trying to get your perfect circle from doing these things. You'll always have kind of a weird shape, like this comes out a little too much. And so I would actually use the ellipse tool. And if you hit U, you get it right here. And if you want to make sure you are on the actual ellipse tool, if you're on the triangle tool, you hit the ellipse tool. If you want to shuffle through them, you just hit the shift and then hit U, and it'll shuffle through your options there until you get to the circle. And then I'm going to put this down like this at the right size I want, and I think I've messed this up a little bit, so I'm going to put it up here and then drag it down here. And then I can duplicate this by holding Command Option Shift and moving it over, and then laying it down here. Okay, and don't worry about the properties, this always shows up. I guess you can see what my properties are set to in case something's not working here, but it should be, on path instead of shape. So if you're having problems with that, make sure that's what it is set at. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Command key, click off of this. Well, obviously we do not want these lines to go over like this. I mean, you could stroke the path and erase them, but what a hassle. So what we're going to do, there's two ways of doing this. Since this will be a solid black line when I'm done, I often just take this, click on this anchor point and just hide the top of the line up there so, you know, it won't show. Or you can take, you can add a path here. You can add a path about here. And you can move it if it doesn't quite match. And these are on this line just somewhere in here, and this line right where the bridge of the nose is. Now I want to erase these, and this is just for any path. I know we made this with the ellipse tool, but this could be for here too. You could click on it and delete that. So what I want to do is I'm going to select this anchor point and then hold down Command and Shift and select this one as well, and then hit the delete key. And that'll just delete everything. That'll just delete those things. So it deletes in between anchor points if you click there, or if you select an anchor point, it'll delete it plus the paths that it's connected to. So that is about it. I think we have covered this whole drawing is now in a path. It's now been totally laid out by vector paths. So let's go ahead and stroke the path. This is what your all the hard-earned work will reap. Before we do that though, I want to go to paths and make sure, double click that I've saved this, because it's a real bummer if you have a work path and then you click off of it and you lose all that work. So always make sure you save your paths. It's very easy to forget to save them and then you lose all that work. Before we stroke it, I'm just going to make a few little adjustments here. I'm going to bring this out a little bit more, bring this down, just a few little things before we stroke it. Okay, so now I have this line layer all ready to go. What you can do if you don't have it is either click this little box here that says create new layer, or you can hit Command Shift N and that will also create a new layer. But I already have my line layer, so now what I want is my brush tool. And if you hit B over on your toolbar here, this is selected. If it's not selected, you might have your pencil tool accidentally selected. So just, you know, click and hold and then select that brush tool at the top menu. And then you'll want, you know, your mode is normal, opacity 100, flow 100. I have it currently at 10 pixels and I have my hardness at 100. I actually want to move this down to maybe 5 pixels. Let's do 6 pixels. This is all going to depend on your resolution. So my document size is 300 dpi, which is, I think, dots per inch or maybe pixels per inch. Let's just look at it. Image size. So yeah, it's 300 pixels per inch. I guess they don't call it dpi anymore. And it's at 20 inches by 11.25, and this is for the screen capture convenience of it. So as you can tell, it's quite a big size. This is 25% of what the image is. So 100% would be all the way there. So because of that, I'm going to pick 6 pixels. If you're working very small, you might only want 1 pixel. If you're working even bigger, you might want more. Well, let's just see what it looks at 6 pixels. And I think that's a little bit even small. So let's make it, I'm going to go to brush and I'm actually going to change my pixel size, and you can use the brackets if you want. I guess 10 was a good size. So we will go back to 10. And now all you have to do, you have your paths there, you're on the brush tool, you just hit enter. And that's the shortest way to do this, and you've just stroked all the paths. You can get rid of them and you can look at your nice clean line art. So what you're essentially doing, the long way of going about it, is with the pen tool. After you've got your brush settings all pre-set up, go back to the pen tool, you right click and you go to something called stroke path. And this is what you essentially do when you hit the enter key. And actually, I guess I should have made sure that you're on the brush, so it won't pick the pencil or any of these. And then you hit OK. And now you have these all done like that. Now say you wanted a few of these thicker than others. So what you can do is hold down the Command and the Option and the Shift and just select these dragging that little box off. Let's select a few of these. Let's do her face line here and maybe down here too. And we want all of these to be thicker lines. So let's go up to 15, 20 pixels. But if we do this, you get these very strong lines. They look a little bit strange and they don't quite fit in. If you hit enter is what I meant by this. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit we're going to go to the pen tool, we're going to right click and hit stroke subpaths, and this means that not all your paths are selected, you just have some of them selected like you want. So go to stroke subpaths, and now you see where it says simulate pressure. You're going to go ahead and click that box, and you might have to unclick this in the future. I'll show you what happens if you just do simulate pressure without laying down a foundation first. But for now, we're going to hit simulate pressure. Okay. And now what it's done is it's made it thicker here, but it hasn't made these very bold, awkward lines. It's just thicker in some places. And that's just one way to add a little line variation. So now what happens if you have something where you just do simulate pressure and you don't lay down like a beginning line thickness? I'll show you here. What happens is it doesn't connect up right. So you'll get like these very thin lines where it's completely gone. And then later, if you do the selection process for coloring like I do, you can see it doesn't quite work out that way. So we don't want that. So you'll always want to lay down a path first, even if it's just 1 pixel, before you do that simulate pressure. I've gone way too far. All right, so one last thing. I'm going to go back to this tutorial path that I had. I'm going to hit Command Option Shift and click on here and click on here, and you just want to make sure you click and don't drag it all, otherwise you'll have accidentally duplicated it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit right click, and then I'm going to pick the option Fill Subpass. And this is a really good way if you have a shape with your paths to quickly color it in. So I'm going to feather my radius 0 and everything else foreground color normal 100%, and I have my foreground color as black. So once I click this, it'll fill it in with black, and now we've filled in her eyelash without having to fill it in with the brush or with the actions as I usually do. So that is it. Hopefully you feel a little bit more knowledgeable now with the pen tool. If you're looking to see my entire process on how I do these digital illustrations from sketch to finish, I have a video already made, and it's coming up in a card right here. And the next video series in this I'll be doing is actions, and that'll just show you how you can quickly select and put a bunch of base colors in. And then another video following that will be about how to take this path tool and duplicate it and manipulate it a little bit to create these like very tiny animations that are very, very easy, where you don't have to have like multiple layers or anything. And once again, I want to say, if you have a lot of questions, if you want to know more about the pen tool and want to come ask me specific questions about that, I will be doing a live stream on Saturday at 11:30 Mountain Time, and I'll put right now on the screen what that is, Universal Time. So you can come and ask me those questions, or you can just ask me questions in the comment section below. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.